Hello, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to spend a few moments with me to take a deep dive into the sharing economy. I have began talking about the sharing economy in one of my TED Talks in 2019, and this presentation will take a different perspective on supply chain sustainability, and it's my goal that you will view supply chain through a different lens at the conclusion of this presentation. So a little bit about me. I am currently a professor of project and supply chain management at Penn State University, where my research is centered around the blending of supply chain management with emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence and blockchain, as well as sustainability. I am also a visiting professor at Georgetown University, where I also serve on the graduate advisory board. And I have also spent the last 2 years working with my peers in building out the Master's in Supply Chain program there at Georgetown. Outside of academia, I serve on various boards and committees for supply chain associations, including the International Supply Chain Education Alliance and the Association of Supply Chain Management. I am also a 5-time TEDx speaker where I discussed blockchain, where a number of those use cases that I mentioned in 2019 are being implemented today. And that is going to be the premise of this discussion. So before I get started, I believe that I first have to set the stage on where I'm going with this presentation. Given that some of my peers that are career academics specialize in one area, and they often say that, Justin, whenever you're speaking at conferences, whenever you're researching, you're all over the place. Pick your lane. And given that I feel that supply chain management, sustainability, diversity and inclusion, emerging technologies are all interconnected, this is my lane, because my lane is systems thinking, right? So many of you have probably heard of the systems theory in graduate school or at other conference presentations, but as one of my peers, Brian Away, said in a conference last week, that the world is a supply chain. I take that a step further and say that, everything that we do in our careers, everything that we do in our personal lives is systems thinking. If you think about an ERP application, you have different modules. And all of those modules make up the ERP system, right? So with that, I want you to view everything that you have heard at this conference through a systems thinking lens, and see if you view things differently. So as we begin this discussion, my research question is going to be, is blockchain the key to sustainability? And I'm going to do things a little bit different in this discussion. This could be good, could be a train wreck. But to explore this question, I'm going to start off with a quick story. And this story goes back to the pandemic era of 2020, hence my COVID look, where Ray Lou and Shannon Christie from Big Country were introduced to me from my peers within the Polkadot ecosystem, in that they felt that our projects had some synergies, given that we had social impact implications into our blockchain projects. So I want to start off by saying that I am not a gamer, and with Ray and Shannon's project in Big Country, they're looking to create what they refer to as a metaverse. It's a digital world. And if you all have children and you've heard of Ready Player One, the movie Ready Player One, or Fortnite, It's where people can come together in this virtual world and collaborate, right? Now, whenever we were trying to find alignment and synergies, one thing that stuck with me in their story is whenever Ray said that one of his, because they're based in New Zealand, and one of his peers in New Zealand began to develop a relation, a friendship with an individual in India. And during the pandemic, this individual in India fell on hard times and was having a difficult time supporting his family. But because they had that relationship in this virtual world, in this metaverse, the individual from New Zealand sent cryptocurrency stable coins to the individual in India to help support his family. So this world that where you think that it's just for gaming, just for entertainment, had a social impact on the life of someone across the globe, right? Another topic that we discussed at length during this conversation is their why. Why did they create this digital world? And they explained that they created Bit Country because they wanted to provide opportunities, inclusion, and equality for all. Now, they also said that they are actually building in protocols and a governance structure where they're going to be able to penalize or slash those that attempt to violate the way of the world, the way of the virtual world, right? So getting moving on to that, to expand on this a little more, as we enter into this decentralized Web3 world. I'm going to talk about Web3 a lot in this discussion, but it's my thought that as we enter into this Web3 world, then organization's purpose will become more evident. And given that we talk a lot about the triple bottom line, I think that you're going to see an introduction of the quadruple bottom line, and that fourth P being purpose. And going back to Ray and Shannon's purpose was to create opportunity, to create inclusivity, to create equality, right? And I talk a lot about, how millennials and Gen Zs will potentially change the business landscape. And in my discussions with undergraduate and graduate students, it leads me to believe that we will begin to see how this fourth P of purpose would move from the fourth P to the first P. And I think that given that we may potentially see a power shift toward the millennials and Gen Zs in coming years, those consumers will begin to dissect whether or not the claims of organizations are indeed valid. They're going to see whether your people, planet, profit, and purpose, what you state on your website, is indeed valid. They're going to want that transparency. They're going to want that proof. And that's one thing I talk about a lot, within my presentations. So going back to this Web3 world. I do work with a number of companies or projects within that work within the Web3 Foundation. I work with a number of grant recipients, and BitCountry is one of those projects within the Polkadot ecosystem. And in working with not only BitCountry but other projects such as Akala and Moonbeam, I found that the founders and the project teams, they did not create these projects, these organizations with profitability in mind. Now, it's also important to note that a number of these founders have already gained their wealth because they had the belief in this technology years ago, right? Now, if you look at some of these categories, you will see that, you have a number of organizations within the same categories where in our traditional world, those organizations would be competing with each other. In this decentralized Web3 world, they're actually working together. They're actually creating what we refer to as the sharing economy. And they're not only, so whenever we think of the sharing economy, we only think of capital. But let me first define the sharing economy in that we are sharing knowledge, we are sharing resources, and we are sharing capital. And that's what all of these projects are doing. Now, also, as you can see, there is only one little bitty project within the supply chain space in this pinkish space here. And there's going to be, I'm going to speak more about that briefly. So with this approach in taking this sharing economy theory and putting it into practice, we're seeing positive outcomes within this Polkadot ecosystem, but investors are noticing these benefits as well. As I spoke with my collaboration with BitCountry, I also mentioned Polkadot, or also mentioned Akala in the last slide, and Akala is actually developing a decentralized finance and a hybrid finance solution, in that their purpose is to contribute to the sustainability, to provide economic opportunities to those who previously did not have means, right? So also, for if you follow the U.S. stock market, Akala was just recently, about a month and a half ago, Akala was recently backed by Coinbase, and Coinbase was one of the largest IPOs so far in 2021. So again, whenever I say investors are noticing the positive impacts, investors are noticing the projects that are going on within the blockchain space, that's just one example. Also, going back to purpose, again, that fourth P, I can't get away from that fourth P. Going back to the purpose. As I mentioned that sustainability is important to Gen Zs and millennials, founders within the Web3 space that fall into that category, they're not making a positive impact for PR purposes or for tax purposes. They're making a positive impact because it's the right thing to do, right? So Vitalik from Ethereum, the one of the co-founders of Ethereum, he's one of the youngest billionaires in the world. He made $1 billion contribution to fight the second wave of COVID within India, and then BitCountry just a couple of weeks ago announced that they are bringing jobs to Africa, through this virtual world, right? So these millennials and Gen Zs are innovating. They're thinking outside of the box to create opportunities to those that previously did not have opportunities, right? So with those examples, I would say my next question is, how could this be transferable to the supply chain ecosystem? Now, I use Polkadot as an example because, my previous experience in the supply chain industry was in the supply chain technology space. So I'm going to use the supply chain technology space in my example. So from a systems thinking approach, we have different solutions and sectors working toward the common goal of increasing the efficiencies and transparency throughout an organization's supply chain. Now, You have organizations competing in the same space, of course. And while some will say there's absolutely no way that they can work closely with a competitor, that was my initial thought. And that's why we're having this conversation. And whenever I talk about the sharing economy, for people outside of supply chain, I say, imagine if Apple and Samsung were working together for a common goal. I say, but that's what happened during the pandemic in the supply chain space. If you think about in the US, FedEx and UPS are probably some of the biggest rivals in the supply chain. But because there was a supply chain issue that had to be resolved, a sustainability issue that had to be resolved, the competitors worked together for a common goal. So if you look, going back to our slide, if you look at the ERP food and beverage providers in this large circle here, if all of these providers created a consortium to develop a product agnostic tool to provide visibility in areas where distributors could send food once it reached close to expiration instead of throwing it away, they could have a dramatic impact on the number of UN SDGs. Also, if you had organizations that offered the product lifecycle management solutions, and they were to create a product agnostic solution to deploy digital threads or digital twins, that solution could potentially reduce the waste of products and raw materials throughout various supply chains across different verticals. So with those two examples, using a systems thinking approach, if we take the concepts from this polka dot ecosystem and we transfer it to the supply chain practice, we're able to introduce this sharing economy where competitors are sharing knowledge, the competitors are sharing resources, the competitors are sharing profits to create more sustainable supply chains and a more sustainable world. Now, to provide a more detailed example, for me, this example would be my Web3 supply chain utopia. So in using this excellent representation that was created by Accenture, if we integrated AI and blockchain and had multiple enterprise solution providers working together, we could democratize AI to alert farmers of when would be the optimal time to plant crops and where. Now, we could also leverage blockchain to track the product throughout the entire supply chain network. We could also ensure that these processes were performed sustainably and ethically. But most importantly, due to this transparency, we could further contribute to the sharing economy by rewarding any or all individuals within this supply chain by sending funds, digital currencies, directly to their digital wallets, right? So during the summer break from Penn State, I've been working with a number of blockchain projects within and outside of the Polkadot ecosystem to provide opportunities to those regions such as South America and Africa, to those individuals that are previously unbanked. Because there are some areas within Africa where people can't bank. There are some countries in Africa that have a high level of corruption where people don't trust the banks. So this is where these solutions can provide opportunities to those. Right. So we're working hard to make this supply chain utopia a reality. But to truly make this a reality, to truly make this a global impact, we need to go beyond academia, and we need to have supply chain organizations to join this Web3 movement. Now 101 Blockchains is a website. It's one of my favorite websites in that they provide a number of different use cases for blockchain for a number of different industries. With this slide, I want to take this slide a step further, and I want to ask you to look at this slide and see if there are any opportunities from a sharing economy perspective within your industries, with your business partners, with your competitors, to see how we can leverage technology to create more sustainable supply chains. So again, it's that systems thinking approach. It's thinking unconventionally to see how we can create more sustainable worlds, more sustainable supply chains. So as we wrap up, I wanted to share what we're working on at SIDTech from a sustainable supply chain perspective. This is a project that my partner from MIT and I started at the beginning of the year, and we're looking to reinvent higher education the Web3 way, and we're looking to do that by introducing artificial intelligence and blockchain to all. And we're looking to make it available across the globe, right? We have been speaking with a number of universities around the world, and the objective is to bring students from different disciplines, such as finance, such as supply chain management, such as computer science. And we actually have a number of students, a number of law school students from King's College in the UK. And we're looking to provide them with the skills needed to be successful within the industry. We're encouraging them to create and fail early, because we believe that is the key to innovation. Instead of a formalized agile approach, we have what we refer to as a controlled chaos approach, in that this is Web3, and we do things a little bit differently. Also, just this week, we have a number of SIDTech student ambassadors from institutions across the US, the UK, and India, and they're wrapping up a substrate runtime developer certification program. And that program is actually organized and ran by Parity, the Web3 Foundation, and Akala. So we've been in the lab for about 4 months now. And there will be some news coming out with as it pertains to supply chain management in about 2 weeks. And then we're going to have some more news coming out around the second week of July, roughly. So you can go to sidtech.ai for more information on this project. And also we ask that you also follow us on LinkedIn for those announcements that are coming up in the coming weeks. So as we have a few takeaways, you always have to have takeaways. So I know we talked a lot about a number of different topics during this discussion, but I would say that the first takeaway would be to take a look at your organization's purpose statement to see if it is aligned with the quadruple bottom line, in that I feel that the QBL will be influencing buying decisions for more and more consumers in the near future. Next, I would say to identify your purpose when it comes to sustainability, in that the pandemic has allowed me to speak at a number of conferences around the virtual conferences around the world, and in speaking with my fellow speakers and speaking with the attendees, their comments and their questions have really opened my eyes, and it has made me come to a realization that, I've had the U.S. blinders on for a number of years. I've said that at other conferences, and because of that, and in speaking with these people from around the world, it has actually shifted my focus in terms of my priority in terms of my sustainability initiatives and what to focus on. Third, I would say to view everything through a systems thinking lens. Whether you're in the supply chain space, whether you are in the sustainability space, the practices I feel need technology, right? But yes, technology is the tool, but without the people, we don't achieve these UN Sustainable Development Goals. Without the people, we do not achieve this technological innovation that I'm so passionate about. So the people are going to be the key to everything when it comes to systems thinking, right? And the fourth takeaway I would say is most important in that you have to get buy-in both internally and externally. I include this takeaway in every single one of my presentations, in that one of the critical success factors in any project, in any initiative, in any movement is change management. And education is a part of change management. And we're all here at this summit, at this conference, because we understand the importance of sustainability. So because of that, I hope that you're able to note down some gems, a number of gems from this event, so that you can take away and you can share it with your organizations, you can share it with your business partners, you can share it with your communities, you can share it with your peers, so that they understand the importance of sustainability. So I want to once again thank you for taking the time to listen to my presentation, and to see more presentations on supply chain management, emerging technologies such as blockchain and artificial intelligence, and sustainability. You can go to my website at justingolson.com. And also, if you would like to further discuss how we can collaborate to achieve this utopia of supply chain transparency and sustainability, please connect with me on LinkedIn. Once again, thank you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.